everyone. This is Steve Rosenberg with Mynd Property Management, and today I'm joined with my good friend Scott Mazuka, who is the portfolio manager for our Portland operation. Scott, thanks so much for being here today.
Hey, good to be here.
So, as we all know, laws are ever changing in this industry, and legislation is there both to protect residents as well as protecting the investor. And sometimes this can become very complicated, and it's things that you really must pay attention to, and you've got to understand what they are trying to say. Now, understand we are not lawyers and we're not giving legal advice. We're simply conveying the information as we see it. You definitely should consult a legal counsel if you're in this area and you think this affects you, to make sure that you're handling it in the correct way. So, Scott, we've done a couple other videos on this content. Can you kind of lay the groundwork to explain to people how serious this is and what's going on?
Yeah, so the city of Portland enacted the F.A.I.R housing laws, and this affects everything from upfront advertising to tenant screening criteria, and even how you have to handle the move-in and security deposits. It's really quite onerous. What we wanted to talk about a little bit here is actually the upfront advertising, and just kind of let everybody know that there's actually been some, that's where this ordinance starts. It's right up front in advertising. There's some very clear rules and regulations that are quite restrictive. Do you want an overview?
Yeah, please. Can you just give us maybe a summary, maybe the top things that people need to know? Because this is very, very important. If I'm a landlord, I would want to know this.
Great. Okay, so for instance, if you have multiple units advertising, for these are larger investors with some plexes and whatnot, there's a 72-hour waiting period before you can take applicants. You have to advertise a range of bedrooms and bath, ranges of rent prices. To some extent, that was fairly common anyway. But how you accept applications is very specific. They have to be date stamped, and there's a certain order that you have to put them in. So if somebody applied early, you have to assume that they applied 8 hours after implementation. Even if somebody came in after that 8 hours, but if they're accessible, they move to the front of the line. And so just upfront advertising and how you accept applications, there's a very clear rule book. Now, there's 2 screening criteria, and regardless of which one you use, has to be advertised up front. There's so much information, we can't cover it in this short podcast, but you actually have to have a link to a URL or website or Google Doc, because there's no way you could actually put all of the criteria into this. So now, in addition, just to advertise, you're going to have a landing page website to post all this information, which includes tenants' rights, rights of accommodation. So it's really really quite a burden. And I think the last thing I'll mention is that we now in the city of Portland have 2 types of applicants: a financially responsible applicant and a non-financially responsible applicant.
So I just want to hit on something that you said. I want to make sure I understand. You're telling me that if I own a if I own a rental property, I cannot fill that unit unless I wait 3 days. Is that what you're saying?
If the unit has more than one property available at any one given time. Wow. If you just had like one single family, the 72-hour criteria would not be implemented. However, the accessible unit and having somebody disabled, those rules would in fact apply.
Okay, now let's go into the financially responsible versus financially say not responsible. Can you explain that a little bit? And you know, I've never heard of having 2 different types of applicants. So can you kind of can you explain this, and how does that affect the process? I mean, this totally revamps your selection process, and I know you touched on it, but to me that was sounding alarm bells in my head, going, wait a second, how do you differentiate the 2? Who is the one who actually differentiates the 2, and what are the repercussions for one versus the other if you select one?
It's a good, really good questions. And keep in mind, this all just is brand new. So to my best ability, how we're approaching this is to make sure in the application process, you have kind of a checkbox to allow somebody to say I'm financially responsible and somebody else to say I'm not financially responsible. And for the person who says I'm not financially responsible, you can run a criminal background check, but you cannot run a credit report. And you cannot use the credit report information to deny that particular applicant. So if you've got, say, a husband and wife, and one of the spouses has enough income to qualify for the unit, and the other spouse, for instance, had really bad credit, it's possible historically that you would reject the application as a couple. And where we're at today is no, you can, you would have to accept them even though one person might have, some very questionable financial history.
Yeah. Wow. That is interesting. Well, obviously the laws are changing, and it seems like it's making it very, very hard to be a self-landlord just to know the rules. I mean, you got to have an encyclopedia of definitions and then know what the laws are. And also, you've got to know that these laws are changing all the time. I mean, it's one thing to have the laws, but now to know that these laws can be anywhere at any time and they can change, like this law just came out. If you're a landlord and you don't know these, this could become very serious financially, and penalties can be very scary. So make sure that you know these laws. Make sure that you're very in tune with them, because some of them are retroactive and some of them are look forward. So again, just make sure that you're educated, which is what we're trying to do here, is really educate you. Scott obviously is an expert here. He knows about this. Scott, if people wanted to just talk to you and pick your brain on this, how would they get a hold of you?
Well, the best way would be to go to the Mynd website, www.mind.co, that's MYND. Find the Oregon tab, and I'm the portfolio manager of the state of Oregon. My contact information will be there.
That's great. And if you'd like to know more in the real estate world, please join our Facebook group. It's the Mastermind, MYND, Mastermind Real Estate Investment Club. There you'll get people like Scott, myself. We'll be talking about the good, the bad, the ugly. You can like, comment, engage, get a very good gauge and understanding of what is going on in the real estate world. Also, we do have a podcast show. It is called The Mindful Investor, and that comes out every week on iTunes, Spotify, and other channels, where we get leading experts as well as brand new novices talking about how they're winning, how they have challenges, and what they're doing to overcome those. So make sure that you please tune into that. On behalf of Scott and myself, thank you so much for watching, and make sure you stay educated, and we'll be back soon with more information. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you'd like to keep the conversation going, join our Facebook group.